Right on cue, after the Mariners played their best series of the year, they go on to play their most pathetic series of the year. That is the story of the 2024 Seattle Mariners. Let's talk about this mind-blowingly stupid baseball team here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, August 15th, 2024. This is Ty and Colby and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners postgame show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Mariners have been swept by a mediocre baseball team, and they only have themselves to blame. Every episode of this podcast for the last 4 or so months has been a game of, it's over, we're back, it's over, we're back, and guess what the wheel landed on today? Before we get into this dumpster fire, shout out to our title sponsor today, Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more, help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So the Mariners went up against scrub after scrub after scrub on the bump for the Tigers today. They walked 4 times in the first inning. And they only ended up scoring 1 run today on a walk, on a bases-loaded walk. That's it. Colby, the Mariners had 1 more hit than you and I did today. And wasted yet another brilliant starting performance from one of their pitchers.
Mm-hmm. Scored 4 runs in the entire series.
Yep. I'm exhausted, Colby. I don't know about you, but as a content creator covering this team, I'm exhausted of watching this team play every single day. I'm exhausted of wondering what version of this team we'll see on a night-to-night basis, what version of this offense we'll see on a night-to-night basis. I'm exhausted of being immediately punished for daring to be optimistic about my favorite baseball team. I'm exhausted of all of this, but more so than anything, I'm exhausted of watching this team lack any sort of sense of urgency, any sort of feel for the moment, any sort of feel for the opportunity they have right in front of them. And now they're 3 games back of the Astros in the AL West. This thing has fallen apart quickly. And this team just has no idea what it wants to be, right? They sweep one of the hottest teams in baseball over the course of the weekend. The vibes are amazing. They extend Victor Robles on Monday, or I guess Sunday, but it gets announced on Monday. And then they do this against the Tigers for the second time in about a week. And the Tigers, while they are a scrappy team, they're a team that is relatively close to the 500 mark. They are a talented ball club. This isn't a team that you should be having this many issues against. And, all due credit to the Tigers. They did play a good couple of series here. They made less mistakes than the Mariners did. They capitalized on more opportunities than the Mariners did. But at the end of the day, the Mariners only have themselves to blame here. The Mariners ultimately beat themselves in both of these series against the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no way around it. The offense is toothless. They seem to lack any desire to even attempt to put up quality plate appearances most nights. The additions to the lineup have actually been fine. Like Turner and Rosarena have done, what you would expect them to do. They've been totally fine. But you're still struggling to put up 1 or 2 runs a night, even against terrible pitching, half the time. So, it's basically become impossible to watch. By the way, you get Paul Skeens tomorrow. Astros are in Chicago. Your chances of winning the American League West probably end this weekend, the way that they're playing right now. So that's fun. Yeah, the offense is a joke. It is something that needs to be torn down, and a lot of tough questions need to be asked this winter. Yeah. There's really nothing you can do about it right now, unfortunately. No. You just hope that maybe they get hot again for a couple of weeks and then they can get back in this race. But Yeah, there's obviously something very wrong with the way that the Mariners either identify or who they pursue, or what they're teaching. Like, clearly there's something wrong here with
Yep.
the hitting offensive philosophy as a whole for the Seattle Mariners, because this is not anything new. Like, it really isn't, and it's been 3 or 4 years now, where it's just kind of been this every single year, where you have stretches where you certainly look like you can hit, and at the end of the year you might actually be in an okay offense, but the consistency just is not there whatsoever. And it's more so than even just sometimes teams struggle and all that stuff. Like, yeah, they do, but nobody struggles quite like the Mariners. Like, nobody
No.
goes through these stretches. Nobody is as inconsistent offensively as the Mariners, and nobody has been for the last 2 or 3 years. So clearly there's something that needs to change. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, clearly this team is right now playing a style of baseball, or at least the last 3 days, that looks more like what you would expect in the first 2 or 3 weeks of spring training, when everybody's just trying to get their work in and go home and hit the golf course. And that's kind of what this effort looks like here against Detroit. And again, it's not like they're facing Tariq Skubal every night. If you want to, if you're getting shut down by Skubal, fine, whatever. That's sure.
We've talked about that. Yeah, like the Zach Wheeler start. All right, I can accept that. It's Zach Wheeler.
Right. I mean, we're talking about Kenta Maeda, some lefty who just absolutely destroyed you twice in a row, and it's a lefty with a bad curveball and a
you get walked 4 times by Alex Faedo today, and you
Mm-hmm.
get 1 run out of that situation.
Yep. They had a runner on first and third with 1 out, and they didn't even come close to scoring that run. So, it's just consistently poor plate appearances in these big moments, with an offense that or with a pitching staff where they're going out there and basically saying, "Hey, I got to throw 9 shutout innings to have any shot to win this game," and you don't really have the bullpen right now, because it really is 2 guys, maybe 3 guys, who are trying to hold that back and together. And if they struggle, you're screwed, because you don't have the firepower to score. He scored 1 run because you got walked around the bases in 8 innings. You can't reasonably expect this offense to go out there in the 9th against a better pitcher and just put up 3 or 4 runs every single time. It's not going to happen. So, the offense is clearly broken, and changes need to be made, both in personnel, probably coaching, maybe even the front office. But right now you're just kind of stuck, because there's nothing you can change right now. Firing the hitting coach tomorrow doesn't really do anything. Like, there's just not any quick fix here.
If you want to do it, fine, go ahead. I don't really care. But
right, it's not going to change anything.
It's not going to change anything. But yeah, if you want to do it, fine. Same thing with the Brant Brown thing. It was like, all right, cool. If you want to do it, that's fine. But like we've seen, didn't change anything. So
No.
This is a failure across the board, though. It's a failure by the people that put this roster together. It's a failure by the coaching staff. It's a failure by, and most importantly, the players, and specifically the guys that are supposed to be your stars. They're supposed to be leading this thing. Everyone's to blame here. Now, there's varying levels of shares of the blame for each group, but overall, it doesn't really matter. This is a failure. Yeah, they're 4 games above 500. Whoop-de-frickin-do. They had a 10-game lead in the AL West, and they blew it at a historic rate. It doesn't really feel like this team has a shared goal. And it really doesn't feel like this offense plays for one another.
Yeah. I don't know. What is the game plan? Because it seems like, the game plan is, I'm going to try and hit a home run. And if I do, we might win. If we don't, we're probably going to lose, but whatever. I'm going to try and get my numbers. I'm going to try and get, it's just frustrating, because there's literally nothing you can do. And I think you just kind of have to hope that it kind of, all clicks for a long enough stretch that maybe you can get back into this thing. But like I said, your season's very much on the line this weekend, because if you fall 4, 5, 6 games back at the Astros with 35 to go, it's over. And again, they're playing the White Sox. You were playing the Pirates. So you better find a way to win at least 2 or 3 here against Pittsburgh, or your season's pretty much over.
All right. So I want to make sure that we that we do give some props here to Brian Wu and Bryce Miller, because they at least showed up in this series. We're going to talk about them in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Game Time.
Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and I get to see the view of every seat in the house, so I know exactly what I'm buying. Game Time's last minute deals give you up to 60% in savings buying last minute for sports, music, comedy, and more. And to avoid any surprises at checkout, you can turn on their all-in pricing to see the full cost, fees included. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Tomorrow you can catch all the action between the M's and the Pirates on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So I want to continue having a pretty serious discussion about this team and where it's at, and have a very realistic discussion about this team, but I do want to break that up here with at least a couple of positives. I want to talk about Brian Wu and Bryce Miller, who refreshing to see at least someone on this team cares still. Wu and Miller were fantastic over the last two games. They both went 7 innings scoreless, 15 strikeouts over that time. And the team ends up going 0-2 in those games, as we all know. So, you can get your Felix puns and jokes and memes and all that stuff off. I don't really care. But it's really disappointing to see that both of these guys, their efforts did not go rewarded. But I still want to give them their props.
Yeah, both guys are taking big steps forward based off of where they were last year when they were pretty darn good as rookies. And now, Wu in particular, the last 3 starts has been dynamic, electric. He's gone 6 2/3 or longer in all 3 starts. The pitch count hasn't been an issue for him. He's throwing a ton of strikes, and it's still just, dominating fastball. Miller today might be his best outing of his career. Goes 7 scoreless, gives up just a couple hits. He threw 23.
All while dealing with a blister, by the way.
Yeah, he threw 23 splitters today. He got 7 whiffs on 15 swings on that pitch, 47% whiff rate on the splitter. It was the best we've seen it. He also got 7 whiffs on the 4-seam fastball, 29%, which we know is a good number for him. Just 3 hard hit balls all game. He was simply electric. Really didn't fall behind in the count all that often. So it was a really, really great day for Miller and Wu. And, it is, as we, kind of look at this season, it's been a disappointment, particularly when, you look at what we were talking about 2 months ago. There's still a little bit of time left to get back into this thing. But one of the things that is not, has not been a disappointment this year is the development of Bryce Miller and Brian Wu. And it's, a good reminder that things are dark right now. Things are bleak right now, but there's a lot going right in this organization. And one of them is the development of those 2 guys. And, also, Logan Gilbert has taken that another step too. And Kirby struggled this last couple times out, particularly on Tuesday. But obviously we know how good George Kirby is, and the Mariners probably have the hardest thing figured out in baseball, which is, how do you build a rotation, a good one? The Mariners have that.
And that's what makes this whole situation all the more maddening. Right. Is you got the hard part out of the way. You figured that out. You
don't even need your offense to be good. You need them to be functional.
Right. You have, again, what we talked about, and this wasn't hyperbole. Really, when you think about it, when you think about the era they're pitching in, what they're doing right now, the historic runs they've gone on at times throughout the course of this season, this is one of the best pitching staffs we have seen in a very long time. You just need the offense to be as close to average as possible. That shouldn't be that difficult to accomplish. Even with the unfavorable confines of T-Mobile Park.
Mm-hmm.
And as we saw over the course of the series, it's not just a T-Mobile Park issue, right? It's not. This team struggles on the road. It'll have success on the road. It'll struggle at home. Sometimes it'll have success at home, right? Sometimes it'll score 12 runs against the Mets. So there isn't really a rhyme or reason to it, right? That's what makes talking about this team so difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot like last year where you had JP have this incredible season, and he was carrying the offense for a long time, and you had Julio having the month of August he did, and you just kind of were looking at it, you go like, man, you're probably never going to get like this version of JP Crawford ever again, and like it would be a shame to not take advantage of it and get into the playoffs and ride that out. Well, this time it's your five guys, your five starters have been really, really good outside of, a handful of outings combined between the five of them. They've been electric and elite for most of the season, and you're just going to waste it because, again, not because the offense is mediocre. Like if the offense was mediocre, the Mariners probably have the best record in baseball right now. Like that's literally all we need is just be bad. Like even a bad offense, you're probably still leading this division. The Mariners don't have a bad offense. The Mariners have a dreadful offense. They have a horrific offense. Like pick your adjective. It is not bad. Like you should strive for a bad offense. Like a bad offense will score, 4 runs a night. Like that'd be great. That'd be incredible. Right now you're averaging less than 3.5. Like it's just, you're not even like in the vicinity of like acceptable. And the sad thing is that you don't even need to be, you don't have to get there. You just have to get close to acceptable and you would win 100 games this year. And while, Kirby and Logan and certainly Miller and Wu, while they're all young and they're all going to be back next year, Castillo probably going to be back too. There's no guarantee you're going to get these repeat performances from any of them. You feel pretty good about it. Like obviously you enter this winter going like, well, we got the rotation. Like we don't need to really focus really any resources there, but it's not a guarantee. Like some of these guys, they're going to have off years or they're going to have bad years or they're going to go through their own struggles or whatever. And, there's also a timeline on, how long this rotation can stay together because you are going to have to make some tough decisions because unfortunately we know that the Mariners are not just going to, sign these guys to long-term deals. They're not going to have them forever. And they're probably not even going to have them all the way through their club control years. So you might only have 1 or 2 more shots with this rotation intact after this year to really win with it. And then, it's, do you trust the Mariners to find the next Logan Gilbert before they trade this one? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's a pretty hard task. Logan Gilbert's one of the best pitchers in baseball, but even if you do trust them, that's not a guarantee that they can actually do that. And so, yeah, you're just running out of opportunities. It's like when you have that rookie quarterback, that elite rookie quarterback on the rookie contract. It's like, okay, well, we only have 1 or 2 shots at this. And every time we don't connect on one of these shots, it's devastating because we're that much closer to having to completely, kind of rebuild and restack the deck and reshuffle the chairs. And that sometimes can lead to, a lot of confusion and a lot of, steps back. And so this offense is an anchor around the neck of the rest of this organization. And it's not acceptable.
Yeah. So obviously a lot of the blame has to fall on the players. The players have to execute at the end of the day, right? Coaches can't go up and take the at-bats for them. Jerry DiPoto and Justin Hollander can't go up there and take the at-bats for them. But clearly something is wrong in the way that they identify players and ultimately come to these decisions that, this is the guy that we want. This is the guy that we want to acquire. And so a lot of the blame still has to fall on the front office for this because they're the ones that put this roster together. That's just how sports work, right? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, your team doesn't perform. It falls on the guys that put the whole thing together. So the issue with the discussion about moving on from the front office, the only issue that I have with it really is that I don't trust the guy at the top to find a proper replacement.
Yep.
So it's a weird spot to be in because it's like, all right, do you just continue to roll with what you know and hope that eventually they figure it out and you just, you know that you at least have people in place that are good at some things. They're good at drafting and developing. They're good at developing pitching. They're great at it, right? There might not be an organization better at doing that specifically, but for whatever reason, they can't find offense at the major league level. Do you go with what you know, right? Do you continue to just go with what you know and like, all right, I at least have a front office in place that is good at this, and I just hope that they redevelop their philosophy when it comes to identifying offense, and they're able to figure this thing out and rebuild this offense? Or do you go with a complete unknown, right? Which can lead to now you still can't get offense, and now you're worse in the draft. You're worse at developing pitching. You're worse at all the things that the previous regime was actually good at.
Yeah,
I don't really know what you do.
Tough question, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Nope, I don't either. I think though at this stage you have to be open to the idea though that at least they should explore it. They should consider that maybe they can upgrade, but I don't know if that's actually the right call to make or not, because it is a nuanced discussion.
Yeah. All right, so let's continue this discussion here in just a moment. But first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners postgame show is brought to you by Prize Picks and Liquid IV. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. This Saturday, Prize Picks is giving you a free pick. Take Israel Adesanya to get more than 0.5 significant strikes in his title fight at UFC 305. It's free money. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I think most of us can agree that there is nothing better than enjoying an ice cold beverage on a hot summer day at the ballpark. So when you're taking in America's pastime, don't forget to hydrate with Liquid IV's Popsicle Firecracker flavor, a surefire summer hit. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America. Because baseball and summer go together like Liquid IV and indulgent hydration. Tear, pour, live more. One stick plus 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the promo code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Tomorrow you can catch all the action between the Mariners and the Pirates on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do to find that is search the word Mariners. So let's get real here for a second. Colby, you and I as content creators, have we done a good job of talking about this team? Have we talked about the right things? Have we attacked this team in the right way? Or did we kind of delude ourselves in thinking that this team was actually good enough to compete for a division, that it was actually capable of doing these things? Because look, even back when they had the 10-game lead, if you remember the episode that we did when they had the 10-game lead, and even when we talked to Gary Hill the last time we had him on, it was like, yeah, they have a 10-game lead, but how? How are they doing this? Like, they're not playing good baseball overall. Like, the offense is terrible. Like, this isn't a new thing. This didn't just suddenly happen, after that Cleveland series, essentially. So did they just get hot randomly? And now we're basically seeing who they are, which is basically just a mediocre team. They're kind of the Tigers, right? They're kind of in that realm of baseball. Obviously got a great rotation, but this offense sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, because they did have a 10-game lead. They did have a stretch from basically mid-April to the end of June, which is, roughly the stretch that we're in right now in terms of how bad they've been, where they won pretty much every series. And they weren't getting swept. And, even the close losses, it was like, oh yeah, this one little thing goes right, and you sweep that team. And so, and they were beating, pretty decent teams too at the time. So I don't know. I don't think so, because I think we looked at the time the offense was bad, but they were still winning. And the idea is like, well, the offense is going to get better. Like it has to, because obviously Garber's not going to hit $160 all year. Polanco's not going to hit 150 all year, and Polanco's going to get healthy. And obviously Julio will figure it out at some point and he'll go on a run, and just none of that really happened. So, and it's, to me, I look at it and I said, we're basing that off of what track record that these guys had. Some of these guys for a decade plus of being just this really good hitter. And they just randomly decided this year, well, I don't know what they decided, but like they weren't going to be good hitters for the first time in their entire careers. Like, I don't think that's foreseeable. And I think, as easy as it is for people to be like, oh, it's Colton Wong, it's all that, like, you don't actually know that. Like, you're trolling, with the hopes, because one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to all of a sudden pretend like track record doesn't matter. Right. Like, oh, this guy's been, not only has this guy been a good player for 10 years, but he was really good last year and he was really good the year before that. So no, I'm not going to suddenly assume that guy sucks now. And again, we're not talking about like, oh, well, we didn't count for regression or anything like that. No, I'm pretty sure we did account for regression. What we didn't account for is the cliff coming at, the age of 30 for a couple of these guys. Cause that's not what happens, that doesn't happen seemingly anywhere else most of the time. So, no, I think we were fine because I think that the Mariners showed us who they could be during that time. And now, that was about 6 weeks. Now we're about 8 weeks into them being a bad team, just objectively a bad team. And I think what we see here is a team that is as inconsistent as its offense. And we see just how far pitching can carry you, because somehow, some way, the Mariners are still, in the playoff hunt. They still can win the division. They still could win a wild card spot. And if they get in, they're going to be dangerous out because they have the starting pitching. So we've seen just how far pitching can carry you. But I think what, maybe what we didn't notice is that we didn't allow for the idea that the offense could get worse. And that, obviously Houston, who at the time had about 70 games of just being trash under their belt, now they've played their last 50 games like they're the old Houston Astros. Yeah. And so I think it's just a combination of things.
I'm not afraid of being wrong. And I've been wrong a lot on this show. We've been wrong collectively on this show. I know you don't want to admit
mostly
it.
You.
Yeah, right. Right. I'll speak for the both of us, though. We've been wrong. All right. We've been wrong quite a bit.
Do we need to pull up the flag list?
Right. I don't think yours has aged that well, though, over time.
I got Bryce Miller.
It's still better than mine, but I don't think it's particularly aged super well.
Significantly better than yours.
But
no, it has not.
But yeah, I'm not afraid of being wrong. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I just want to talk ball. I want to talk about my favorite baseball team, and like I said, while I am tired of being pretty much immediately punished every time I dare to get optimistic about this team, I'm not going to stop getting optimistic about this team if it makes sense to me. And this offseason, it made sense to me. There was nothing that I saw out of the profiles that they brought in offensively that suggested to me, oh, these guys are going to fall off a cliff. Right. And miss me with the whole, but it's the Mariners. Of course, now that they're part of the Mariners and they're in Seattle, like this is where hitters go to die. Miss me with that.
That's not analysis.
Right. Like that's just fan pessimism, which is fine. That's fine. That's totally fine. You can do that. If that's how you want to fan, that's totally fine by me. That's just
not how we're going to do it.
That's not how, and that would be a disservice to you guys if that's all we just said, and that's how we based our analysis.
Yeah, it would be intellectually disingenuous. Just be like, oh, it's just the Mariners, so they suck. We just did that every day. You guys wouldn't listen to us. You wouldn't.
I looked at Jorge Polanco. I looked at Mitch Garver. And again, we had talked about this. We had said this so many times over the course of the offseason, once this roster came into full view. And we said, yeah, it's not really performance risk. It's just injury risk. Right? Like, if these guys can stay healthy, this should be a pretty good offense. Well, they've stayed relatively healthy.
The guys we were worried about health-wise have.
Yeah.
I mean, Julio and JP haven't, but
No, but like, yeah, Garver and obviously Polo's been hurt throughout the year and he's been dealing with stuff. But overall, like, they've been able to be on the field more often than not.
mm-hmm.
And yet they have not performed.
Nope.
And I don't understand. I really don't. It's like last year. I didn't understand the Colton Wong thing. Now I can wrap my head around Colton Wong a little bit easier than Jorge Polanco, because at the very least with Wong, there were years where he was a below average hitter in the past, where it was kind of inconsistent, but he had made a swing change. So I'm thinking, all right, swing change. Last couple of years have been really good for him offensively. Like, that's just a new hitter, right? We can kind of just discredit like some of the previous years because this is a remade version of Colton Wong, right? Or AJ Pollock, where it's like, all right, well, he's at the very least crushed lefties. And then you bring him in and then he posts like literally like a 12 WRC plus against lefties. Go figure. Right.
Right. But we say that and we point out the negatives and it's like, okay, cool. They got Teoscar Hernandez, and Teoscar, well, he wasn't what you wanted him to be. He was totally fine. Like, he was a good hitter. Yeah. Jesse Winker, again, not what you acquired him to be, but he was actually fine. He was above average hitter.
Mostly walks, but yeah.
But so he had a 350 on base. Like, that's the most important stat. So, Eugenio Suarez was great his first year here, and he was mediocre last year. So, it's not like, obviously Randy Arozarena's come in. He's been totally fine. Yep. So it's not like they just, every time they take a swing, they miss and they just whiff huge, but it's enough that it's just like, I don't know, obviously there's something wrong here. Either it's, the ball part, the bat, maybe it's the batter's eye, maybe it's, maybe it's the methodology, maybe it's just the people making the calls. Maybe it's just Jerry and Justin picking the wrong guys over and over and over again, but they picked enough of the right guys enough that it's like, doesn't seem like, it's just, what makes this so frustrating is that there is not an easy answer for a solution. There's not. Yeah. You could say fire Service. Okay, how does that make the offense better? You could say fire Jerry and Justin. Like, okay, who are you getting to replace them, and how do you know that they're going to fix the offense? They're going to fix this problem. So you're basically firing people so you can feel good for a couple of days before, ultimately none of the guys who are stepping up to the plate and actually taking these at bats are being held accountable. So, there's not an easy answer. There's not a simple solution. As much as we want to make this a binary question, it's not. There are multiple angles. There's different ideas. There's different, it's just not, a binary decision. It's not just this guy's fault or this guy's fault, or
it's everyone's.
This is the problem. This is the problem. Right. Yeah. It's very nuanced, and that's what makes it difficult.
Colby, let's wrap up on this. If I told you, I don't know, maybe in November, December last year, January, whatever, that this offense would consist of JP Crawford, Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena, Justin Turner, Jorge Polanco, Mitch Garver, Cal Raleigh, etc., you'd think that team was, with this pitching staff, was winning at least 95 games, right? I just told you who those guys were that were going to make up that offense with that pitching staff. Like, at the very least, it was going to, like, they are division favorites. They might be AL favorites.
I mean, I tweeted this earlier today. If the offense was half as good as the Mariners rotation, they would be the best team in baseball. And frankly, I'm not sure it would be that close. That's how good the rotation is. And yeah, when you start talking like, hey, they have Arozarena, they have Julio, they have Cal, and Cal's going to hit 30 home runs again and all that. Like, you'd be like, and Garver and Polanco, like, obviously, those are established hitters. Yeah, I would say that's at least 95 wins. Like, I'd beat that. That's a World Series contender right there. And, just right now, they're not, because they're not even, they're right now, they're a fringe playoff contender. So,
yeah,
it's a bummer. There's no way around it. But, it's got about 6 weeks to try and save your season. Not going to be easy. And you're running out of time where it's even feasible to expect that kind of turnaround, but it still does exist. And, if they make it to the ALCS or whatever, are we really going to care about how they looked from, mid-July to late to, August? Probably not that much.
No, but yeah, it doesn't really seem like that's
Nope.
a feasible achievement here with the way that they're playing right now. All right, that is going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty and Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty and Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Now head on over to Locked On Seahawks to get all the latest out of training camp from Corbin Smith and the gang. Tell them Ty and Colby sent you. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day. We'll see you next time. Peace.